Question 1. System analysis indicates that a new electric vehicle component is nearing its production readiness deadline. The engineering team has identified potential, but not fully quantified, risks related to the disposal of certain rare earth materials used in its manufacturing process, and a minor, unconfirmed possibility of thermal runaway under extreme, unsimulated conditions. The marketing department is pushing for immediate launch to capture market share. What is the most responsible approach to impact assessment in this situation? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive environmental and safety impact assessment, including detailed analysis of material disposal protocols and rigorous testing for thermal runaway under a wider range of simulated extreme conditions, even if it delays the launch. Option B. Prioritize the marketing launch by issuing a preliminary environmental statement and a disclaimer regarding potential safety concerns, with a commitment to address any issues that arise post-launch. Option C. Proceed with the launch as scheduled, relying on existing general disposal guidelines for electronic waste and assuming the thermal runaway risk is negligible given the component's intended operating parameters. Option D. Initiate a limited impact assessment focusing only on the environmental aspects of material disposal, deferring any detailed safety testing for thermal runaway until after the product is on the market. Correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive environmental and safety impact assessment, including detailed analysis of material disposal protocols and rigorous testing for thermal runaway under a wider range of simulated extreme conditions, even if it delays the launch. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for rapid product deployment with the imperative of thorough impact assessment, particularly concerning potential environmental and safety implications. The pressure to meet market demands can lead to shortcuts, which, if not managed, can result in regulatory noncompliance, reputational damage, and harm to consumers or the environment. The complexity arises from identifying all relevant stakeholders, potential impacts, and appropriate mitigation strategies within a constrained timeframe. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive impact assessment that integrates environmental, safety, and consumer protection considerations from the outset. This aligns with the principles of responsible product development and regulatory compliance, such as those potentially outlined in frameworks like the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, or similar consumer product safety regulations in the U.S. A thorough assessment ensures that potential risks are identified, evaluated, and addressed proactively, thereby minimizing negative consequences and fostering sustainable business practices. This approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to ethical product stewardship. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that prioritizes speed over a comprehensive assessment risks, overlooking critical environmental or safety hazards. This could lead to violations of regulations governing product safety, e.g., Consumer Product Safety Act, or Environmental Protection, e.g., Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, resulting in fines, product recalls, and legal liabilities. Ethically, it represents a failure to protect public well-being and the environment. Another incorrect approach might involve conducting a superficial assessment that only addresses the most obvious impacts, ignoring potential secondary or long-term effects. This can lead to unforeseen problems that emerge after product launch, causing significant harm and regulatory scrutiny. It demonstrates a lack of foresight and a failure to adhere to the spirit of regulatory requirements designed to ensure comprehensive risk management. Focusing solely on economic benefits without adequately considering environmental and safety impacts is also a flawed strategy. This approach neglects the broader societal responsibilities of a corporation and can lead to significant reputational damage and loss of public trust, in addition to potential regulatory penalties for non-compliance with environmental and safety standards. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to impact assessment. This involves identifying potential impacts, assessing their likelihood and severity, and then prioritizing mitigation efforts based on these assessments. Structured process, including stakeholder consultation, expert review, and adherence to established regulatory guidelines, is crucial. When faced with time constraints, professionals should advocate for adequate resources and time for impact assessment, rather than compromising its thoroughness. If immediate deployment is critical, a phased approach with robust post-launch monitoring and contingency planning should be considered, ensuring that the initial assessment, though potentially expedited, is still grounded in sound principles and regulatory compliance. Question 2. Consider a scenario where a General Motors employee, working in a department involved in upcoming product development, accidentally gains access to highly confidential details about a groundbreaking new technology that is expected to significantly boost the company's market share upon its public announcement. This information is not yet public and is considered material to investors. The employee has a close friend who is an avid stock market investor. What is the most appropriate course of action for the employee? Option A. Share the details of the new technology with their investor friend, suggesting they consider investing in General Motors stock before the public announcement. Option B. Use the information to make a personal investment in General Motors stock, believing it is a sound investment based on their insider knowledge. Option C. Immediately report the discovery of the confidential information to their direct supervisor and the company's compliance department, and refrain from any discussion or action related to the information outside of official channels. Option D. Disregard the information as it is not directly related to their day-to-day responsibilities and focus solely on their assigned tasks. The correct answer is C. Immediately report the discovery of the confidential information to their direct supervisor and the company's compliance department, and refrain from any discussion or action related to the information outside of official channels. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to secure a competitive advantage by leveraging internal information and the strict ethical and regulatory obligations to maintain fairness and prevent insider trading. The pressure to perform and meet targets can tempt individuals to cross ethical boundaries, making careful judgment and adherence to established protocols paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing adherence to the General Motors Code of Conduct and relevant securities regulations. This involves recognizing the sensitive nature of the information, understanding the prohibition against using material non-public information for personal gain or to influence others, and taking proactive steps to safeguard this information. This aligns with the ethical imperative to act with integrity and uphold the trust placed in employees by the company and the market. Specifically, it reflects a commitment to preventing market manipulation and ensuring a level playing field for all investors. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves sharing the information with a trusted friend outside the company who is an active investor. This constitutes a clear violation of insider trading laws and company policy. It directly facilitates the misuse of material non-public information, leading to unfair market advantages and potential legal repercussions for both the employee and the recipient of the information. This action breaches the duty of confidentiality and fiduciary responsibility owed to General Motors and its shareholders. Another incorrect approach is to use the information to make personal investment decisions, even if the intention is not to profit excessively. This still falls under the purview of insider trading, as it involves trading based on information not available to the general public. It demonstrates a lack of understanding or disregard for the regulations designed to protect market integrity and investor confidence. A third incorrect approach is to dismiss the information as irrelevant without proper consideration of its potential impact. While the information might not directly relate to an individual's immediate role, its material nature means it could influence market perception and stock price. Failing to properly handle such information, even by simply ignoring it, can still lead to unintended consequences and a breach of professional responsibility if it later comes to light that the information was mishandled. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such situations should employ a structured decision-making process. First, identify and classify the information. Is it material and non-public? Second, consult relevant company policies and codes of conduct, such as the General Motors Code of Conduct and applicable securities laws. Third, if there is any doubt, err on the side of caution and refrain from any action that could be construed as misuse of information. Fourth, seek guidance from legal counsel or compliance officers within the organization. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are grounded in ethical principles and regulatory compliance, safeguarding both the individual and the company. Question 3. The investigation demonstrates that a key supplier for General Motors' electric vehicle battery components is facing significant financial pressure, potentially impacting their ability to maintain current labor and environmental standards. The procurement department is pushing for immediate renegotiation of contracts to secure lower prices, citing competitive market pressures. Which of the following approaches best aligns with responsible corporate conduct and long-term stakeholder value for General Motors? Option A. Immediately demand a significant price reduction from the supplier, threatening to seek alternative suppliers if their current pricing is not met, without further investigation into the root cause of their financial difficulties. Option B. Inform the supplier that they must absorb all cost increases themselves, and that General Motors will not consider any adjustments to the contract terms, as this is a supplier's responsibility to manage their own costs. Option C. Terminate the contract with the supplier and immediately source components from a new supplier, offering the lowest price, regardless of the new supplier's labor or environmental practices. Option D. Engage in collaborative discussions with the supplier to understand their financial challenges, explore potential solutions for cost optimization that do not compromise labor or environmental standards, and assess the feasibility of offering support or alternative payment terms if appropriate. The correct answer is D. Engage in collaborative discussions with the supplier to understand their financial challenges, explore potential solutions for cost optimization that do not compromise labor or environmental standards, and assess the feasibility of offering support or alternative payment terms if appropriate. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate financial interests of General Motors with the long-term sustainability and ethical considerations of its supply chain. The pressure to reduce costs can conflict with ensuring fair labor practices and environmental responsibility among suppliers. Careful judgment is required to avoid short-sighted decisions that could lead to reputational damage, regulatory penalties, and ultimately a less resilient business. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a holistic view of stakeholder interests, aligning with the principles of corporate social responsibility and sustainable business practices. By engaging with suppliers to understand their challenges and collaboratively seeking solutions, General Motors demonstrates a commitment to ethical sourcing and long-term partnership. This proactive and collaborative stance not only mitigates risks associated with noncompliance, but also fosters stronger supplier relationships, potentially leading to innovation and improved quality, which are crucial for a company like General Motors. This aligns with the spirit of ethical conduct expected in business operations, even if not explicitly codified in a single regulation for this specific assessment. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost reduction without considering supplier impact would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to suppliers cutting corners on labor or environmental standards to meet price demands, creating significant regulatory and ethical risks for General Motors. Such an approach ignores the interconnectedness of the supply chain and the potential for downstream consequences, such as forced labor allegations or environmental violations, which could result in severe financial penalties, legal action, and irreparable damage to the company's brand and reputation. This failure to conduct due diligence and uphold ethical sourcing principles is a direct contravention of responsible business conduct. Another incorrect approach, which involves terminating contracts with suppliers solely based on price without investigation, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential impact on workers and the environment. It also misses opportunities to work with suppliers to improve their practices, which could be a more sustainable and ethical solution. This approach can lead to supply chain disruptions and may inadvertently push suppliers towards less scrupulous practices to survive, creating further risks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-stakeholder perspective. This includes 1. Identifying all relevant stakeholders, employees, suppliers, customers, investors, communities, regulators. 2. Assessing the potential impact of decisions on each stakeholder group. 3. Evaluating risks and opportunities associated with different courses of action, considering both financial and non-financial factors, ethical, reputational, environmental, social. 4. Seeking input from relevant internal departments, legal, compliance, procurement, sustainability, and where appropriate, external experts. 5. Prioritizing decisions that promote long-term value creation and ethical conduct, even if they involve short-term trade-offs. 6. Establishing clear communication channels with suppliers to foster transparency and collaboration. Question 4. The audit findings indicate a general increase in the potential for operational disruptions due to third-party vendor dependencies, but lack specific data points on which vendors or processes are most at risk. What is the most appropriate next step to address this finding? Option A. Advise the audit team that the findings are too vague to act upon and request more specific examples. Option B. Initiate a targeted risk assessment project to identify critical vendors, analyze their dependency impact, and quantify the potential for disruption. Option C. Immediately implement a company-wide policy requiring all vendors to undergo a comprehensive revetting process within the next quarter. Option D. Focus on enhancing general cybersecurity measures across the organization, assuming this is the primary driver of vendor-related risks. The correct answer is B. Initiate a targeted risk assessment project to identify critical vendors, analyze their dependency impact, and quantify the potential for disruption. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the audit findings, while identifying a potential risk, are vague and lack specific actionable data. The challenge lies in translating a general observation into a concrete and effective risk mitigation strategy without overreacting or underestimating the potential impact. Careful judgment is required to determine the most appropriate next steps that are both compliant with regulatory expectations and practically implementable within General Motors' operational context. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and data-driven method for understanding and addressing the identified risk. By initiating a deeper investigation to quantify the risk and understand its root causes, the company demonstrates a commitment to proactive risk management, which is a core tenet of robust corporate governance and regulatory compliance. This aligns with the principles of identifying, assessing, and treating risks, ensuring that resources are allocated effectively to areas of greatest concern. This methodical approach helps to avoid superficial fixes and ensures that any subsequent mitigation efforts are targeted and effective, thereby satisfying regulatory expectations for a well-managed risk framework. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate, broad-stroke policy changes without understanding the underlying issues would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to inefficient resource allocation, unnecessary operational disruption, and potentially fail to address the actual root cause of the risk, leaving the company vulnerable. Such an approach might also be seen as a reactive measure rather than a proactive risk management strategy, which could draw scrutiny from regulators. Another incorrect approach, such as dismissing the audit findings due to their lack of specificity, would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This demonstrates a disregard for internal control mechanisms and a failure to uphold the duty of care to stakeholders. Regulators expect organizations to take all identified risks seriously and to investigate them thoroughly, regardless of initial presentation. Ignoring potential risks, even if vaguely described, can lead to significant compliance breaches and reputational damage. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to risk management. First, thoroughly understand the nature and scope of the audit finding. Second, initiate a targeted investigation to gather more specific data and identify root causes. Third, assess the potential impact and likelihood of the identified risk. Fourth, develop and implement appropriate mitigation strategies based on the assessment. Finally, monitor the effectiveness of these strategies and continuously review the risk landscape. This iterative process ensures that risk management is an ongoing and integrated part of business operations, rather than a one-off exercise. Question 5. Examination of the data shows a notable increase in customer complaints regarding a specific vehicle feature. While the initial statistical analysis confirms this trend, a deeper dive into the underlying causes and potential biases is warranted before implementing any corrective actions. Which of the following represents the most professionally responsible and ethically sound approach to addressing this situation? Option A. Dismiss the increase in complaints as a statistical anomaly and continue with standard operational procedures. Option B. Focus solely on the statistical significance of the complaint increase and recommend a minor software update to address the perceived issue. Option C. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis, explore potential contributing factors beyond the feature itself, and seek corroborating evidence from multiple data sources before proposing solutions. Option D. Immediately initiate a recall of the affected vehicles, and issue a public statement acknowledging the issue. The correct answer is D. Immediately initiate a recall of the affected vehicles and issue a public statement acknowledging the issue. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data analysis where initial findings might lead to premature conclusions or actions. The professional's responsibility is to ensure that any recommendations or decisions based on this data are robust, well-supported, and adhere to ethical data handling principles, particularly concerning potential biases and the need for verification. The challenge lies in moving beyond superficial observations to a deeper, more critical evaluation of the data's implications. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a thorough, multifaceted review of the data. This involves not only confirming the initial observation, but also investigating potential underlying causes, considering alternative explanations, and seeking corroborating evidence. This aligns with best practices in data analysis and professional conduct by ensuring that conclusions are not drawn hastily. It promotes a systematic and objective evaluation, minimizing the risk of flawed decision-making. This approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes accuracy and avoids making unsubstantiated claims that could negatively impact the company or its stakeholders. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately acting on the initial observation without further investigation. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it bypasses due diligence. It risks implementing policies or strategies based on incomplete or misinterpreted data, which could lead to operational inefficiencies, financial losses, or even non-compliance with internal GM policies or external regulations. If those policies are based on flawed data, it demonstrates a lack of critical thinking and a disregard for the rigorous standards expected in professional data analysis. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the initial observation without a proper review. This is also a professional failing, as it ignores potentially valuable insights. It could mean overlooking a genuine trend or anomaly that requires attention, leading to missed opportunities or unaddressed risks. Ethically, it represents a dereliction of duty to thoroughly analyze available information. This approach can stem from confirmation bias or a reluctance to challenge existing assumptions, both of which are detrimental to objective analysis. A third incorrect approach might involve focusing solely on the statistical significance of the observation without considering its practical implications or potential biases. While statistical validity is important, it does not tell the whole story. Ignoring the context, the potential for confounding variables, or the real-world impact of the observed trend is a failure to conduct a comprehensive analysis. This can lead to decisions that are statistically sound but practically irrelevant or even harmful, violating the principle of using data to drive informed and effective business decisions. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured approach to data analysis. This involves 1. Initial observation. Acknowledge and document the initial finding. 2. Hypothesis generation. Develop potential explanations for the observation. 3. Data validation and exploration. Seek to confirm the observation with additional data points and explore the context. 4. Root cause analysis. Investigate the underlying factors contributing to the observed trend. 5. Impact assessment. Evaluate the practical implications and potential consequences. 6. Recommendation formulation. Based on a comprehensive understanding, develop well-supported recommendations. This iterative process ensures that conclusions are evidence-based and actionable, upholding professional integrity and contributing to sound business practices within General Motors. Question 6. Performance analysis shows a significant increase in operational costs within a specific manufacturing division. Management is considering implementing immediate, drastic measures to reduce these costs, such as consolidating multiple job roles into fewer positions and significantly reducing the frequency of non-essential equipment maintenance. What is the most professionally responsible approach to address this situation? Option A. Immediately implement the proposed cost-saving measures to achieve rapid financial improvements, assuming that employees will adapt and that any minor disruptions will be temporary. Option B. Prioritize the cost reduction by implementing the changes without further investigation, focusing solely on the immediate financial benefit to the company. Option C. Rely on the anecdotal feedback from a few long-tenured employees who believe the proposed changes are feasible to guide the decision-making process. Option D. Conduct a thorough impact assessment that evaluates the potential effects of these cost-saving measures on employee workload, safety protocols, equipment longevity, and overall production quality before any changes are implemented. Correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough impact assessment that evaluates the potential effects of these cost-saving measures on employee workload, safety protocols, equipment longevity, and overall production quality before any changes are implemented. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for cost reduction with the long-term implications of operational changes on employee morale, productivity, and adherence to established safety protocols. A hasty decision without proper impact assessment can lead to unforeseen negative consequences that outweigh the initial savings. The correct approach, which involves conducting a comprehensive impact assessment before implementing changes, represents best professional practice. This aligns with principles of responsible management and ethical business conduct, often implicitly or explicitly supported by regulatory frameworks that emphasize due diligence and risk management. Such an assessment would typically involve evaluating potential effects on employee roles, training needs, workflow efficiency, and compliance with any relevant General Motors internal policies or industry standards that govern operational changes. It ensures that decisions are informed, sustainable, and minimize disruption. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate cost savings without considering the broader impact fails to uphold professional responsibility. This could lead to regulatory or ethical failures by potentially violating internal General Motors policies regarding employee welfare or operational integrity. For instance, if the cost-cutting measure leads to increased workload or reduced safety oversight, it could indirectly contribute to a breach of workplace safety regulations or internal compliance standards. Another incorrect approach might involve relying solely on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a few individuals, which lacks the rigor required for sound decision-making and could overlook critical systemic issues. This demonstrates a failure in due diligence and a disregard for a systematic, evidence-based approach to management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Define the objective clearly. 2. Identify all potential stakeholders and affected parties. 3. Gather relevant data and information, including operational metrics, employee feedback, and any applicable internal policies or external guidelines. 4. Analyze the potential positive and negative impacts of proposed changes across various dimensions: operational, financial, human resources, compliance. 5. Develop mitigation strategies for identified risks. 6. Evaluate alternative solutions. 7. Make an informed decision based on the comprehensive assessment, prioritizing long-term sustainability and ethical considerations. 8. Communicate the decision and its rationale transparently to all affected parties. Question 7. The assessment process reveals that a new software implementation at General Motors may significantly alter data handling procedures across multiple departments. To expedite the deployment, the project lead is considering a streamlined impact assessment that relies heavily on existing documentation and informal discussions with key personnel, rather than conducting comprehensive interviews and data validation across all affected teams. Which approach best aligns with regulatory requirements and professional ethical standards for conducting such an assessment? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment involving detailed data validation, cross-departmental interviews, and thorough documentation of all findings and potential risks, ensuring alignment with relevant U.S. data privacy and cybersecurity regulations. Option B. Delegate the impact assessment to individual department heads, allowing them to report on potential impacts within their own silos without a centralized review or validation process. Option C. Focus the impact assessment solely on the technical aspects of the software implementation, excluding broader operational and data privacy implications to streamline the process. Option D. Proceed with a rapid assessment based on existing documentation and informal discussions, prioritizing speed to market over exhaustive data gathering, assuming that potential issues will be addressed post-implementation. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment involving detailed data validation, cross-departmental interviews, and thorough documentation of all findings and potential risks, ensuring alignment with relevant U.S. data privacy and cybersecurity regulations. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect sensitive data. The pressure to deliver a comprehensive impact assessment quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise data integrity or privacy. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating potential risks associated with data handling and analysis without delaying critical business decisions unduly. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process for identifying, analyzing, and evaluating the potential impacts of a proposed change on various systems, processes, and stakeholders. This aligns with best practices in risk management and regulatory compliance. Specifically, it necessitates a thorough understanding of the General Motors' internal policies and any applicable U.S. federal or state regulations concerning data privacy, cybersecurity, and operational integrity. A robust impact assessment ensures that potential negative consequences are foreseen and addressed proactively, thereby safeguarding the company's reputation, financial stability, and legal standing. This approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to responsible business practices. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the assessment based on anecdotal evidence and assumptions without verifying the data sources or their reliability. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure as it can lead to inaccurate conclusions, flawed decision-making, and potential non-compliance with data governance standards. It undermines the credibility of the assessment and exposes the company to risks stemming from decisions based on misinformation. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed over thoroughness, leading to a superficial review of potential impacts. This can result in overlooking critical risks, such as data breaches, system vulnerabilities, or non-compliance with consumer protection laws. Ethically, this demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the potential harm to customers or the company. From a regulatory standpoint, it can lead to violations of statutes requiring adequate risk assessment and mitigation. A third incorrect approach is to exclude certain departments or stakeholders from the assessment process, even if their operations or data are affected by the proposed change. This creates blind spots and can lead to an incomplete understanding of the overall impact. It is an ethical failure to exclude relevant parties and a regulatory failure if it results in non-compliance with requirements for stakeholder consultation or impact on protected groups. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with clearly defining the scope and objectives of the impact assessment. This involves identifying all relevant stakeholders, data sources, and potential risks. The next step is to gather and analyze data systematically, ensuring its accuracy and reliability. This should be followed by an evaluation of the identified impacts, considering both quantitative and qualitative factors. Finally, mitigation strategies should be developed and documented, with a clear plan for implementation and monitoring. Throughout this process, adherence to internal policies and relevant U.S. regulations is paramount. Professionals should always err on the side of caution when dealing with sensitive information and potential risks, prioritizing thoroughness and accuracy over expediency. Question 8. Analysis of the implementation of a new customer data management system at General Motors, which aims to centralize and enhance data security protocols, presents several strategic choices. Considering the regulatory landscape governing data privacy and security, which of the following approaches is most likely to ensure both effective system integration and sustained compliance? Option A. Prioritizing the speed of deployment by bypassing detailed internal legal and compliance reviews to meet aggressive business objectives, with post-deployment training to follow as a secondary concern. Option B. Immediate, company-wide deployment of the new system with a single, standardized online training module accessible to all employees, assuming that technical implementation alone will drive compliance. Option C. Relying on the IT department to manage all aspects of the system, including user training and ongoing compliance checks, with minimal input from other business units or the legal department. Option D. A phased rollout of the system, beginning with a pilot group, coupled with comprehensive, role-specific training for all employees and the establishment of a dedicated support team to address user queries and monitor adherence to new protocols. The correct answer is D. A phased rollout of the system, beginning with a pilot group, coupled with comprehensive, role-specific training for all employees, and the establishment of a dedicated support team to address user queries and monitor adherence to new protocols. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in navigating the implementation of a new compliance system within a large automotive manufacturer like General Motors. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for robust data security and privacy, as mandated by relevant regulations, with the practicalities of integrating a complex system across diverse operational units. Ensuring that all employees understand and adhere to the new protocols, especially those with varying levels of technical proficiency and direct customer interaction, requires a multifaceted approach that goes beyond mere technical deployment. Careful judgment is required to anticipate potential resistance, identify training gaps, and establish clear lines of accountability. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive, phased rollout that includes thorough employee training and ongoing monitoring. This aligns with the principles of data protection and privacy regulations, which often require organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to safeguard personal data. By involving key stakeholders from different departments early on, it ensures that the system's design and implementation are practical and address real-world operational needs, thereby increasing the likelihood of successful adoption and compliance. This proactive and inclusive strategy minimizes the risk of data breaches and regulatory noncompliance, fostering a culture of data stewardship. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical aspects of system deployment, without adequate consideration for user training and ongoing support, would be professionally unacceptable. This would likely lead to user errors, accidental data exposure, and ultimately, violations of data privacy laws. Such an approach fails to meet the appropriate technical and organizational measures requirement, as it neglects the human element crucial for effective data protection. Another incorrect approach that bypasses internal legal and compliance review to expedite deployment risks significant regulatory penalties and reputational damage. This demonstrates a disregard for established governance frameworks and the legal obligations of the organization. A third incorrect approach that relies on a one-size-fits-all training module without tailoring it to specific job functions and risks would be ineffective. This would fail to equip employees with the knowledge and skills necessary to handle sensitive data appropriately in their daily tasks, increasing the likelihood of breaches and noncompliance. Professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment, identifying critical data assets and potential threats. This should be followed by the development of a detailed implementation plan that includes robust training, clear communication channels, and mechanisms for feedback and continuous improvement. Engaging legal and compliance teams from the outset is paramount to ensure adherence to all applicable regulations. Furthermore, establishing clear metrics for success and regular audits will help to identify and address any emerging issues promptly, ensuring sustained compliance and data security. Question 9. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a new feature for the General Motors connected vehicle platform, designed to collect real-time driving behavior data for personalized service recommendations, is nearing its development deadline. The engineering team is eager to deploy it to gain a competitive edge. Which of the following actions best demonstrates a responsible and compliant approach to impact assessment in this context? Option A. Proceed with the immediate deployment of the feature, with a plan to conduct a post-deployment impact assessment if any issues arise. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive data privacy and security impact assessment, including an evaluation of potential risks to user data and compliance with relevant automotive and data protection regulations, before the feature is made available to customers. Option C. Rely on the existing impact assessment conducted for the core connected vehicle platform, assuming the new feature's data collection is sufficiently similar. Option D. Delegate the impact assessment to the marketing team, as their focus is on customer engagement and feature adoption. Correct answer is A. Proceed with the immediate deployment of the feature, with a plan to conduct a post-deployment impact assessment if any issues arise. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for rapid product development with the imperative to conduct thorough impact assessments, especially when dealing with potentially sensitive data or systems. The pressure to innovate and meet market demands can create a temptation to shortcut or defer crucial impact analysis steps. However, failing to adequately assess the potential consequences of a new feature or system can lead to significant regulatory violations, reputational damage, and financial penalties. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a proactive and systematic evaluation of potential risks and impacts before full deployment. This aligns with the principles of responsible innovation and data governance, which are increasingly emphasized in regulatory frameworks. By conducting a comprehensive impact assessment, the organization can identify and mitigate potential issues related to data privacy, security, system stability, and compliance with relevant regulations. This proactive stance helps prevent future problems and demonstrates a commitment to ethical business practices. An incorrect approach that bypasses or superficially addresses the impact assessment would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Specifically, it could violate data protection laws by failing to assess the risks associated with processing personal data, leading to potential breaches and noncompliance. It could also contravene internal policies and industry best practices designed to ensure system integrity and user safety. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for potential harm to customers or the business itself, prioritizing speed over responsibility. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's risk appetite, regulatory obligations, and ethical commitments. When faced with pressure to accelerate development, professionals should advocate for the inclusion of impact assessment as a non-negotiable step. This involves clearly articulating the potential consequences of skipping this process, referencing relevant regulations and internal policies, and proposing alternative strategies that allow for both speed and thoroughness, such as phased assessments or risk-based prioritization of impact analysis. Question 10. Market research demonstrates a growing demand for more fuel-efficient vehicles, prompting General Motors to explore process optimization within its manufacturing operations to potentially reduce production costs and increase output. A proposal suggests streamlining the assembly line by reducing the number of quality inspection points and accelerating the pace of certain tasks, with the stated goal of achieving faster turnaround times and lower per-unit manufacturing expenses. Which of the following approaches best represents a responsible and effective strategy for General Motors to pursue process optimization in this context? Option A. Rely on the experience and intuition of long-serving assembly line supervisors to identify and implement process improvements, prioritizing their suggestions for efficiency gains without extensive data collection or formal testing. Option B. Focus exclusively on identifying and eliminating any process steps that do not directly contribute to the immediate assembly of a vehicle, even if these steps involve quality checks or final inspections, to maximize speed and minimize labor costs. Option C. Implement a phased approach to process optimization, starting with pilot programs in specific assembly lines to rigorously test the impact of proposed changes on product quality, efficiency, and customer satisfaction before a full-scale rollout. This includes gathering comprehensive data on defect rates, warranty claims, and customer feedback throughout the pilot phase. Option D. Immediately implement the proposed changes across all assembly lines to capitalize on the perceived cost savings and increased output, assuming that the existing quality control measures are sufficient to catch any potential issues. The correct answer is C. Implement a phased approach to process optimization, starting with pilot programs in specific assembly lines to rigorously test the impact of proposed changes on product quality, efficiency, and customer satisfaction before a full-scale rollout. This includes gathering comprehensive data on defect rates, warranty claims, and customer feedback throughout the pilot phase. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the pursuit of efficiency gains with the imperative to maintain product quality and customer satisfaction, all within the context of established operational procedures and potential regulatory compliance. The pressure to optimize processes without compromising the integrity of the final product or the customer experience necessitates careful consideration of each proposed change. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven evaluation of proposed process changes. This involves understanding the potential impact on all critical aspects of the operation, including quality control, supply chain reliability, and customer feedback mechanisms. By conducting pilot programs and phased implementations, the company can identify and mitigate risks before full-scale deployment, ensuring that process optimization does not inadvertently lead to product defects, increased warranty claims, or damage to brand reputation. This aligns with general principles of responsible business operations and a commitment to delivering value to customers, which are implicitly expected in any professional assessment context. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering quality implications is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the introduction of substandard components or manufacturing shortcuts, potentially violating implied warranties of merchantability and fitness for a particular purpose, and increasing the likelihood of product recalls or safety issues. Such an approach disregards the long-term consequences of compromising quality for short-term financial gains and could expose the company to significant legal and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that bypasses established quality assurance protocols in the name of speed is also professionally unsound. Quality assurance is a critical safeguard against errors and defects. Circumventing these checks, even with the intention of accelerating production, introduces a high risk of undetected flaws entering the market. This not only undermines customer trust, but also creates a potential liability for the company if defective products cause harm or dissatisfaction. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a few individuals without rigorous testing or data analysis is unprofessional. Decisions regarding process optimization should be grounded in objective data and thorough analysis, not subjective impressions. This approach lacks the necessary due diligence to ensure that proposed changes are genuinely beneficial and do not introduce unforeseen negative consequences. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Define the objective clearly. What specific improvements are sought? 2. Identify potential solutions. Brainstorm various process optimization strategies. 3. Assess risks and benefits. For each strategy, evaluate potential positive and negative impacts on quality, cost, efficiency, and customer satisfaction. 4. Gather data. Collect relevant metrics and evidence to support or refute assumptions. 5. Pilot and test. Implement changes on a small scale to observe real-world effects. 6. Implement and monitor. Roll out successful changes systematically and continuously track performance. 7. Seek feedback. Actively solicit input from all stakeholders, including employees and customers. Question 11. Research into optimizing the assembly line process for a new electric vehicle model at General Motors has identified potential areas for increased efficiency. Which of the following approaches best balances immediate productivity gains with long-term operational integrity and regulatory adherence? Option A. Implementing a new robotic arm system that significantly speeds up a critical welding step without extensive retraining for existing staff, assuming the new system's interface is intuitive. Option B. Modifying the chemical treatment process for battery components to reduce cycle time without consulting environmental health and safety teams, based on a supplier's assurance of reduced hazardous waste. Option C. Introducing a streamlined inspection process that reduces the number of quality checks per vehicle to accelerate throughput, relying on the assumption that the new components are inherently more reliable. Option D. Conducting a comprehensive review of the entire assembly line workflow, involving input from line workers, safety officers, and quality control engineers, followed by a pilot implementation of proposed changes in a controlled environment to assess impact before full rollout. The correct answer is A. Implementing a new robotic arm system that significantly speeds up a critical welding step without extensive retraining for existing staff, assuming the new system's interface is intuitive. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in process optimization within a large automotive manufacturing environment like General Motors. The core difficulty lies in balancing the immediate need for efficiency gains with the long-term implications of process changes on workforce skills, safety protocols, and regulatory compliance. A hasty implementation without thorough consideration of these interconnected factors can lead to unintended consequences, such as increased error rates, safety incidents, or non-compliance with environmental or labor regulations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that optimization efforts are sustainable, ethical, and legally sound. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a holistic and data-driven methodology. By involving cross-functional teams, including those directly impacted by the process changes e.g., line workers, safety officers, quality control, it ensures that all perspectives and potential risks are considered. The emphasis on pilot testing and phased implementation allows for real-world validation of the optimized process, minimizing disruption and providing opportunities for iterative refinement. This aligns with principles of responsible innovation and continuous improvement, often implicitly or explicitly encouraged by industry, best practices, and regulatory oversight bodies that aim to ensure product quality, worker safety, and environmental protection. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering the impact on worker training and safety protocols would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to violations of occupational safety and health regulations, such as those enforced by OSHA in the U.S., by creating an environment where workers are not adequately equipped to handle new procedures, increasing the risk of accidents and injuries. Another incorrect approach that bypasses established quality control checkpoints in the name of speed would risk non-compliance with product quality standards and potentially violate consumer protection laws, leading to recalls or reputational damage. A third incorrect approach that ignores potential environmental impacts of a new process, such as increased waste or emissions, could lead to violations of environmental regulations, resulting in fines and legal action. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear definition of the problem and objectives. This should be followed by a thorough analysis of the current process, identifying bottlenecks and areas for improvement. Crucially, this analysis must include an assessment of potential impacts on all stakeholders, including employees, customers, and the environment, as well as a review of relevant regulatory requirements. Developing multiple potential solutions, evaluating them against defined criteria, including efficiency, cost, safety, quality, and compliance, and then selecting the most robust option for pilot testing is essential. Continuous monitoring and feedback loops are vital throughout the implementation and ongoing operation of the optimized process. Question 12. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a new customer engagement platform could significantly increase sales by leveraging detailed user behavior data for personalized marketing. However, the data collection methods are more extensive than current practices and may raise privacy concerns. What is the most responsible course of action? Option A. Proceed with the platform but only collect data that is absolutely essential for basic functionality, foregoing the personalized marketing aspects to avoid any potential privacy issues. Option B. Implement the platform immediately to capitalize on the projected sales increase, assuming that as long as it's not explicitly illegal, it's acceptable business practice. Option C. Conduct a thorough legal and ethical review of the data collection and usage, ensuring full compliance with all applicable privacy regulations, and obtaining explicit, informed consent from users for the expanded data collection, while also assessing the potential impact on customer trust. Option D. Rely on the fact that competitors are already using similar data collection methods, suggesting it's a widely accepted industry practice and therefore unlikely to cause significant issues. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough legal and ethical review of the data collection and usage, ensuring full compliance with all applicable privacy regulations, and obtaining explicit, informed consent from users for the expanded data collection, while also assessing the potential impact on customer trust. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in corporate decision-making where a proposed initiative, while seemingly beneficial on the surface, carries significant ethical and regulatory implications. The core challenge lies in balancing potential financial gains against the imperative to uphold ethical standards and comply with relevant regulations, particularly concerning data privacy and consumer trust. The pressure to innovate and achieve market advantage can sometimes lead to overlooking or downplaying these critical non-financial considerations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a comprehensive assessment that extends beyond immediate financial returns. It involves a thorough evaluation of the ethical implications of data collection and usage, ensuring strict adherence to data privacy laws and regulations. This includes understanding the scope of consent required, the potential for data misuse, and the impact on consumer trust. By proactively identifying and mitigating these risks, the company demonstrates a commitment to responsible innovation and long-term sustainability, which is a cornerstone of ethical business practice and regulatory compliance. This approach aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, often embedded in data protection frameworks. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach focuses solely on the potential revenue generation, without adequately considering the ethical and legal ramifications of data acquisition and utilization. This can lead to violations of data privacy laws, such as the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, if applicable, or similar consumer protection statutes. Such a failure to conduct due diligence on data handling practices can result in substantial fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer confidence. It represents a disregard for the fundamental right to privacy and a breach of ethical obligations. Another incorrect approach might involve seeking the minimum legally required consent, without considering the spirit of ethical data handling. While technically compliant, this approach can still erode consumer trust if customers perceive the data collection as intrusive or exploitative. Ethically, businesses have a responsibility to be transparent and to treat customer data with respect, going beyond mere legal minimums to foster genuine trust. This approach risks alienating customers and can lead to negative publicity and a decline in market share, even if no direct legal violation occurs. A third incorrect approach could be to proceed with the initiative based on anecdotal evidence of competitor success, without conducting an independent and thorough risk assessment. This follow-the-leader mentality ignores the unique regulatory landscape and ethical considerations that may apply to the company's specific operations and customer base. It also fails to account for the possibility that competitors may themselves be operating in a legally or ethically precarious manner. This approach is reactive rather than proactive and exposes the company to significant unforeseen risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals faced with such a decision should adopt a structured, risk-aware approach. This involves 1. Clearly defining the objectives and potential benefits of the initiative. 2. Identifying all relevant legal and regulatory requirements pertaining to data handling, privacy, and consumer protection. 3. Conducting a thorough ethical review, considering potential impacts on stakeholders, particularly customers. 4. Performing a comprehensive risk assessment, quantifying potential financial, reputational, and legal consequences. 5. Developing mitigation strategies for identified risks. 6. Seeking input from legal counsel, compliance officers, and ethics committees. 7. Making a decision based on a holistic evaluation that balances potential gains with ethical and legal imperatives, prioritizing long-term sustainability and trust over short-term profits. Question 13. Strategic planning requires a thorough evaluation of potential environmental consequences for new product launches. General Motors is preparing to introduce a new electric vehicle model. Which of the following approaches to assessing the environmental impact of this new model best aligns with responsible corporate citizenship and regulatory expectations? Option A. Assign the responsibility for the environmental impact assessment to the product development team, whose primary objective is to ensure the vehicle meets performance and cost targets for market launch. Option B. Utilize existing, general environmental impact data from previous vehicle models, assuming that the environmental footprint of an electric vehicle will be largely similar to traditional internal combustion engine vehicles. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive and independent environmental impact assessment that rigorously evaluates all potential consequences of the new product's manufacturing and life cycle, including resource consumption, waste generation, emissions, and end-of-life disposal. Option D. Focus primarily on the immediate financial benefits of the new electric vehicle, such as projected sales figures and investor returns, while acknowledging potential environmental risks in a general statement without detailed analysis. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive and independent environmental impact assessment that rigorously evaluates all potential consequences of the new product's manufacturing and life cycle, including resource consumption, waste generation, emissions, and end-of-life disposal. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing the immediate financial pressures of a new product launch with the long-term strategic imperative of responsible environmental stewardship. The pressure to meet aggressive sales targets and secure investor confidence can create a conflict of interest, potentially leading to shortcuts in the impact assessment process. The complexity lies in accurately forecasting and mitigating potential environmental consequences that may not be immediately apparent or easily quantifiable, requiring a nuanced understanding of both business objectives and regulatory compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a comprehensive and independent environmental impact assessment that rigorously evaluates all potential consequences of the new product's manufacturing and life cycle. This includes considering resource consumption, waste generation, emissions, and end-of-life disposal. This approach aligns with the principles of sustainable business practices and proactive risk management, which are increasingly embedded in regulatory frameworks and corporate governance expectations. By prioritizing a thorough assessment, the company demonstrates a commitment to environmental responsibility, which can enhance brand reputation, mitigate future regulatory penalties, and foster long-term stakeholder trust. This proactive stance is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and adherence to environmental protection laws, ensuring that the company operates within legal and ethical boundaries. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on the immediate financial benefits and downplaying potential environmental risks represents a failure to adhere to responsible business conduct and potentially violates environmental regulations that mandate impact assessments. This approach prioritizes short-term gains over long-term sustainability and legal compliance, creating significant reputational and financial risks. Relying on outdated or incomplete data for the impact assessment is a direct contravention of the principles of due diligence and accurate reporting. This can lead to underestimation of environmental harm, resulting in non-compliance with environmental standards and potential legal repercussions. It also demonstrates a lack of commitment to scientific rigor and responsible decision-making. Delegating the impact assessment to a department with a vested interest in the product's success, such as the marketing or sales team, creates a significant conflict of interest. This compromises the objectivity and integrity of the assessment process, making it unlikely to identify or adequately address potential negative environmental impacts. This approach undermines the independence required for a credible assessment and can lead to regulatory scrutiny and penalties. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical considerations and long-term sustainability alongside financial objectives. This involves 1. Identifying all relevant stakeholders and their interests, including environmental groups and regulatory bodies. 2. Seeking objective and independent expertise for critical assessments, particularly those with potential environmental implications. 3. Adhering to established best practices and regulatory requirements for impact assessments, ensuring thoroughness and accuracy. 4. Fostering a culture of transparency and accountability, where potential environmental risks are openly discussed and addressed proactively. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating impact assessments as new information or technologies become available. Question 14. Which approach would be most appropriate for a hiring manager at General Motors when faced with an urgent need to fill a critical position, but also aware of the detailed requirements outlined in the General Motors hiring assessment test syllabus regarding candidate evaluation and selection? Option A. Rely on past hiring experiences and informal candidate assessments to quickly identify a suitable candidate, assuming the formal assessment process is a mere formality. Option B. Delegate the entire assessment process to a junior team member with minimal oversight, trusting their judgment to quickly identify a candidate who appears to fit the role. Option C. Prioritize immediate candidate placement by expediting the assessment process, focusing only on the most obvious qualifications and deferring detailed regulatory review until after the hire. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive review of the General Motors hiring assessment test syllabus to identify all mandatory assessment criteria and ensure each candidate is evaluated against these specific requirements before making a selection. Correct answer is C. Prioritize immediate candidate placement by expediting the assessment process, focusing only on the most obvious qualifications and deferring detailed regulatory review until after the hire. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate conflicting priorities between immediate operational needs and long-term strategic compliance. The pressure to deliver a product quickly can lead to shortcuts that might inadvertently violate established regulatory frameworks. Careful judgment is required to balance efficiency with adherence to legal and ethical standards, ensuring that General Motors operates within the bounds of the law and maintains its reputation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding and application of the relevant regulatory framework before proceeding with operational decisions. This aligns with the principle of lawful conduct and due diligence, which are fundamental to corporate responsibility. Specifically, adhering to the General Motors hiring assessment tests guidelines ensures that all hiring practices are fair, non-discriminatory, and meet any specified legal or internal policy requirements. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of legal challenges, reputational damage, and the costly consequences of noncompliance. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed without considering regulatory implications would fail to uphold the principle of lawful conduct. This could lead to discriminatory hiring practices, which are prohibited under various employment laws, and expose the company to significant legal penalties and reputational harm. Another incorrect approach that relies on assumptions about regulatory compliance without verification is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for established procedures, potentially resulting in unintentional violations. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes anecdotal evidence or personal judgment over documented regulatory requirements ignores the objective and legally binding nature of these frameworks, leading to inconsistent and potentially unlawful outcomes. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation of the problem against the established regulatory and ethical guidelines. This includes identifying all relevant regulations, consulting with legal or compliance departments when necessary, and ensuring that any proposed action is fully compliant. When faced with conflicting pressures, professionals should advocate for adherence to the established framework, clearly articulating the risks associated with noncompliance. Question 15. The review process indicates that a customer called inquiring about specific details of a recent service appointment, including the exact parts replaced and the total cost. The customer provided their name and vehicle identification number (VIN) over the phone. The service advisor suspects the caller might not be the registered owner of the vehicle, as the voice sounds different from the usual contact. The advisor needs to access this service record to answer the customer's questions accurately. Option A. Access the service record using the VIN and name, but only provide a general overview of the service performed without disclosing specific part numbers or the exact cost, stating that detailed information requires further verification. Option B. Lightly inform the caller that due to privacy policies, specific service details cannot be disclosed over an unverified phone line, and offer to mail a summary of the service to the registered owner's address on file, or suggest the caller visit a dealership in person with identification. Option C. Immediately access the service record using the provided VIN and name, and relay all the requested details about parts replaced and the total cost to the caller, assuming they are the legitimate owner. Option D. Ask the caller for additional personal information not readily available on the service record, such as the customer's date of birth or mother's maiden name, to confirm their identity before providing any service details. The correct answer is B. Politely inform the caller that due to privacy policies, specific service details cannot be disclosed over an unverified phone line, and offer to mail a summary of the service to the registered owner's address on file, or suggest the caller visit a dealership in person with identification. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect sensitive data. The pressure to quickly resolve a customer issue must be weighed against the potential for unauthorized access or disclosure of personal information. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any action taken is both effective and compliant. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data privacy and security in accordance with General Motors' internal policies and relevant data protection regulations. By seeking to verify the caller's identity through established, secure channels and avoiding the direct disclosure of sensitive information over an unverified line, the employee upholds their duty of care to the customer and the company. This aligns with principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that information is accessed and shared only when legitimate and with proper authorization. An incorrect approach that involves immediately providing the requested information without proper verification fails to adhere to data protection principles. This could lead to a breach of privacy, unauthorized access to sensitive customer data, and potential legal repercussions for General Motors. It demonstrates a disregard for established security protocols and an abdication of responsibility to protect customer information. Another incorrect approach, which is to refuse to assist the customer entirely due to the unverified nature of the call, is also professionally unacceptable. While it avoids a data breach, it fails to provide adequate customer service and could damage the company's reputation. A more nuanced approach is required that balances security with service. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of company policies regarding data handling and customer verification. When faced with an ambiguous situation, the professional should 1. Identify the core issue and the information requested. 2. Assess the risks associated with fulfilling the request directly. 3. Consult established protocols for customer verification and data access. 4. If direct fulfillment is not possible or advisable, explore alternative secure methods to assist the customer. 5. Document the interaction and the steps taken. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, compliant, and customer-centric while maintaining the highest standards of data security. Question 16. The analysis reveals that a new cybersecurity threat has emerged, capable of disrupting vehicle connectivity and potentially accessing sensitive customer data. While this threat has not yet been widely exploited against automotive manufacturers, its potential impact is assessed as extremely high due to the interconnected nature of modern vehicles and the value of the data involved. The company has also observed a consistent, low-level incidence of minor software glitches in older vehicle models that cause intermittent infotainment system reboots, a problem that is easily and inexpensively resolved. Which of the following represents the most appropriate risk assessment approach for General Motors in this situation? Option A. Allocate resources proportionally to the frequency of identified risks, meaning more resources would be directed towards addressing the recurring software glitches than the novel cybersecurity threat. Option B. Focus mitigation efforts on the minor software glitches, as they are frequent and easily resolved, ensuring immediate customer satisfaction and minimizing operational disruptions from known, albeit minor, issues. Option C. Defer significant investment in addressing the cybersecurity threat until there is clear evidence of its exploitation within the automotive industry, focusing instead on readily addressable, lower-impact risks. Option D. Prioritize the cybersecurity threat based on its high potential impact, even though its likelihood is currently assessed as low, and allocate significant resources to develop robust preventative measures and incident response plans. The correct answer is D. Prioritize the cybersecurity threat based on its high potential impact, even though its likelihood is currently assessed as low, and allocate significant resources to develop robust preventative measures and incident response plans. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a nuanced understanding of risk assessment beyond simple identification. The challenge lies in prioritizing risks based on their potential impact and likelihood, and then determining the most appropriate mitigation strategies within the context of General Motors' operational environment and regulatory obligations. Careful judgment is required to avoid overallocating resources to low-impact risks or underestimating the potential severity of high-impact ones. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a systematic and comprehensive evaluation of potential risks. This includes not only identifying what could go wrong, but also assessing the probability of each event occurring and the potential consequences for General Motors. By considering both impact and likelihood, a more accurate prioritization of risks can be achieved, allowing for the development of targeted and effective mitigation plans. This aligns with the principles of robust risk management frameworks, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory bodies overseeing large corporations like General Motors, emphasizing proactive identification and management of potential threats to business continuity and financial stability. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the frequency of past incidents, without considering the potential severity of future events is professionally unacceptable. This failure to assess impact can lead to a misallocation of resources, where minor, frequent issues consume attention, while potentially catastrophic but less frequent risks are overlooked. This could violate ethical obligations to stakeholders to manage the business prudently, and may also fall short of regulatory expectations for comprehensive risk oversight. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes risks based solely on the ease of mitigation, without regard for their potential impact or likelihood, is also professionally unsound. This can lead to a superficial risk management strategy that addresses only the most convenient problems, ignoring those that pose the greatest threat. Such an approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to uphold the fiduciary duty to protect the company's assets and reputation. It may also be seen as a failure to implement a risk management system that is adequate to identify and manage the risks the company faces, potentially drawing regulatory scrutiny. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to risk assessment. This begins with defining the scope of the assessment and identifying potential risks across all relevant areas of the business. Subsequently, each identified risk should be analyzed in terms of its likelihood and potential impact. This analysis should be informed by historical data, expert judgment, and an understanding of the external operating environment. Based on this analysis, risks should be prioritized, and appropriate mitigation strategies should be developed and implemented. Finally, a continuous monitoring and review process should be established to ensure the effectiveness of the risk management program and to adapt to changing circumstances. This systematic process ensures that risk management is an integral part of strategic decision-making and operational execution. Question 17. The performance metrics show a significant upward trend in customer engagement following the recent marketing campaign, but the data used to generate these metrics was collected through a third-party analytics provider, whose data sourcing practices are not fully transparent. Considering the potential for this engagement data to inform future product development, what is the most responsible course of action? Option A. Immediately initiate the next phase of product development, leveraging the insights from the engagement data, while simultaneously initiating a deeper audit of the third-party provider's data collection methods. Option B. Proceed with product development as planned, assuming the third-party provider adheres to all necessary legal standards, and address any potential data privacy issues if they arise later. Option C. Halt all product development informed by this data until a comprehensive privacy impact assessment is completed and legal counsel confirms compliance with all relevant data protection regulations. Option D. Focus solely on refining the current marketing campaign based on the positive metrics, deferring any product development decisions until the data sourcing transparency issue is fully resolved. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate the next phase of product development, leveraging the insights from the engagement data, while simultaneously initiating a deeper audit of the third-party provider's data collection methods. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the pursuit of innovation and market competitiveness with the stringent ethical and regulatory obligations surrounding data privacy and consumer protection. The performance metrics, while indicating positive trends, are derived from data that must be handled with utmost care. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that any new product development, even if seemingly beneficial, does not inadvertently violate established privacy laws or erode consumer trust. Careful judgment is required to navigate the fine line between leveraging data for improvement and respecting individual rights. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, proactive assessment of regulatory compliance and ethical implications before proceeding with significant product development. This aligns with the principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and transparency, which are foundational to regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, or similar frameworks governing data handling. By conducting a comprehensive privacy impact assessment and seeking legal counsel, the company demonstrates a commitment to responsible innovation and adherence to its legal and ethical duties. This proactive stance mitigates risks of future penalties, reputational damage, and loss of consumer confidence. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the positive performance metrics without considering the data's origin or usage would be professionally unacceptable. This oversight represents a significant regulatory failure, potentially violating data protection laws by not adequately assessing the risks associated with processing personal data. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for consumer privacy, prioritizing business objectives over fundamental rights. Another incorrect approach, which involves proceeding with development based on assumptions about data legality without verification, also constitutes a regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses due diligence, creating a high risk of noncompliance and potential data breaches or misuse, which can lead to severe legal repercussions and damage to the company's reputation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This framework should begin with identifying all relevant data sources and their associated privacy considerations. Next, a thorough review of applicable regulations and internal policies is crucial. Subsequently, a privacy impact assessment should be conducted to identify potential risks and mitigation strategies. Consulting with legal and compliance experts is a non-negotiable step. Finally, decisions should be made based on a comprehensive understanding of both the business opportunity and the associated legal and ethical responsibilities, ensuring that any action taken is compliant, ethical, and sustainable. Question 18. During the evaluation of potential risks to General Motors' global supply chain, a new geopolitical instability emerges in a key manufacturing region. Which of the following approaches best reflects a robust risk assessment strategy for this evolving situation? Option A. Acknowledge the uncertainty of the geopolitical situation and decide to postpone any significant risk assessment or mitigation efforts until the situation stabilizes and its impacts become clearer. Option B. Immediately implement a drastic measure, such as ceasing all operations with suppliers in the affected region, without a detailed analysis of the potential consequences or alternative solutions. Option C. Conduct a thorough assessment of the specific vulnerabilities within the supply chain that could be impacted by the geopolitical instability, considering various scenarios and developing a tiered response plan with mitigation and contingency measures. Option D. Focus exclusively on immediate, direct impacts such as potential factory closures, while disregarding indirect effects like currency fluctuations or increased transportation costs. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough assessment of the specific vulnerabilities within the supply chain that could be impacted by the geopolitical instability, considering various scenarios and developing a tiered response plan with mitigation and contingency measures. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in risk assessment by requiring a forward-looking evaluation of potential impacts on a critical business function, supply chain, due to an external, evolving event, geopolitical instability. The difficulty lies in quantifying and qualifying risks that are inherently uncertain and can have cascading effects. Professionals must balance the need for proactive risk mitigation with the practical limitations of predicting future events and their precise consequences. This requires a nuanced understanding of the business's operational dependencies and the potential vulnerabilities introduced by the geopolitical situation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment that considers both the likelihood and potential impact of various geopolitical scenarios on the supply chain. This includes identifying specific vulnerabilities, e.g., reliance on single-source suppliers in affected regions, transportation route disruptions, currency fluctuations, and evaluating their potential severity. It also necessitates developing a range of mitigation strategies, from diversifying suppliers to increasing inventory levels or exploring alternative logistics. This aligns with best professional practice by adopting a structured, data-informed, and proactive stance towards risk management, aiming to build resilience and minimize disruption. This approach is ethically sound, as it prioritizes the continuity of operations and the protection of stakeholders' interests by anticipating and preparing for adverse events. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to dismiss the geopolitical situation as too uncertain to warrant significant action. This fails to acknowledge the regulatory expectation for proactive risk management, particularly for critical business functions like the supply chain. Ethically, it represents a dereliction of duty by neglecting potential threats that could harm the company and its stakeholders. It also ignores the principle of due diligence in risk assessment. Another incorrect approach would be to focus solely on immediate, tangible risks without considering the broader, systemic impacts of the geopolitical instability. This narrow focus might overlook indirect consequences such as increased raw material costs due to trade sanctions or reputational damage from association with unstable regions. This approach is flawed because it lacks a holistic view of risk, which is essential for effective risk management and can lead to unforeseen vulnerabilities. A third incorrect approach would be to implement a single, drastic mitigation strategy without a thorough assessment of its feasibility or potential unintended consequences. For example, immediately halting all business with a particular region without exploring alternatives could severely disrupt operations and incur significant financial losses. This demonstrates a lack of analytical rigor and a failure to consider the interconnectedness of business operations, which is a hallmark of poor professional judgment. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this situation by first defining the scope of the risk assessment, focusing on the supply chain's critical dependencies. They should then gather intelligence on the geopolitical situation and its potential direct and indirect impacts. This should be followed by a qualitative and, where possible, quantitative assessment of identified risks, considering both likelihood and impact. Finally, a range of mitigation and contingency plans should be developed, prioritized based on their effectiveness and feasibility, and regularly reviewed and updated as the geopolitical landscape evolves. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, proportionate, and aligned with the organization's risk appetite and regulatory obligations. Question 19. The evaluation methodology shows a scenario where a marketing team is preparing to launch a new customer outreach campaign using a recently acquired third-party data list. During the data onboarding process, a junior analyst flags a potential discrepancy in the data's origin, suggesting it might not fully comply with the company's data acquisition policies and privacy standards. The sales director is eager to proceed to meet quarterly targets. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action? Option A. Proceed with the campaign as planned, assuming the data provider has adhered to all necessary regulations, and address any potential issues if they arise later. Option B. The junior analyst should independently verify the data's compliance before raising any flags to avoid disrupting the sales team's efforts. Option C. Inform the sales director of the analyst's concerns but proceed with the campaign, focusing on meeting sales targets, and instruct the analyst to investigate the data's compliance in parallel. Option D. Immediately halt the campaign and escalate the concerns to the data privacy officer and IT security team for a comprehensive review and risk assessment before any further action is taken. Correct answer is D. Immediately halt the campaign and escalate the concerns to the data privacy officer and IT security team for a comprehensive review and risk assessment before any further action is taken. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's immediate financial interests and its ethical obligations to uphold data privacy and security. Pressure to meet sales targets can incentivize overlooking potential risks or cutting corners, which directly contravenes the principles of responsible data handling. Careful judgment is required to balance business objectives with the imperative to protect customer information. The correct approach, which involves escalating the issue to the data privacy officer and IT security team for a thorough risk assessment and remediation plan before proceeding with the CIMP, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, as mandated by regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. If this were a US-based exam scenario, it prioritizes compliance, customer trust, and mitigating potential legal and reputational damage. This proactive stance ensures that any data processing is conducted lawfully, fairly, and transparently, with appropriate technical and organizational measures in place. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the campaign while assuming the data is clean and compliant fails to acknowledge the potential for data breaches or misuse. This would be a direct violation of data protection laws, which require organizations to implement robust security measures and conduct due diligence on data sources. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the discrepancy and focus solely on meeting sales targets, demonstrates a severe ethical lapse and disregard for regulatory requirements. This could lead to significant fines, legal action, and irreparable damage to General Motors' reputation. A third incorrect approach, which is to inform only the sales manager without involving the relevant compliance and security departments, is insufficient as it does not guarantee the issue will be addressed at the appropriate level with the necessary expertise. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, identify the potential ethical or regulatory conflict. Second, gather all relevant facts and assess the potential risks and consequences. Third, consult internal policies, relevant regulations, and subject matter experts, e.g., legal, compliance, IT security. Fourth, evaluate the available options based on their alignment with ethical principles and regulatory requirements. Finally, choose the course of action that best protects the company, its customers, and its stakeholders, even if it means delaying or modifying business objectives. Question 20. Cost-benefit analysis shows that addressing a minor but known potential defect in a new vehicle component will incur significant upfront costs for redesign and retooling, potentially delaying production by several weeks and impacting quarterly sales targets. However, not addressing it means the defect is unlikely to cause a safety issue in the short term, but there is a small probability of a costly recall and reputational damage in the future. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for a General Motors engineer? Option A. Implement a minor, cosmetic adjustment to the component that does not address the root cause but might satisfy superficial quality checks, while hoping the defect does not manifest. Option B. Delay reporting the defect until further data is gathered or until it becomes a more significant problem, to avoid disrupting current production schedules. Option C. Proceed with production as planned, documenting the defect internally but not escalating it, assuming the low probability of future issues makes immediate costs prohibitive. Option D. Proactively report the defect to management and relevant departments, recommending a redesign and delay in production to ensure full compliance with safety standards and the company's ethical commitments. Correct answer is D. Proactively report the defect to management and relevant departments, recommending a redesign and delay in production to ensure full compliance with safety standards and the company's ethical commitments. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it pits potential short-term financial gains against long-term ethical obligations and potential reputational damage. The pressure to meet targets, coupled with the allure of a quick solution, can cloud judgment. It requires a professional to prioritize integrity and compliance over immediate financial benefits, understanding that the cost of unethical behavior can far outweigh any perceived savings. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to the General Motors Code of Conduct and relevant U.S. automotive industry regulations. This involves transparently reporting the issue, even if it incurs immediate costs for remediation. This aligns with the ethical principle of honesty and integrity, which are foundational to building trust with stakeholders, including customers, regulators, and the public. It also mitigates future risks, such as recalls, lawsuits, and brand damage, which would be far more costly than addressing the issue proactively. Upholding these standards demonstrates a commitment to product safety and quality, which is paramount in the automotive sector. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves downplaying the issue and proceeding with the current production plan. This violates the ethical obligation to ensure product safety and integrity. It also likely contravenes U.S. consumer protection laws and automotive safety regulations, which mandate reporting of known defects that could impact safety. The failure here is a direct disregard for regulatory compliance and a breach of the duty of care owed to consumers. Another incorrect approach is to implement a superficial fix that masks the problem without addressing its root cause. While this might appear to satisfy immediate production demands, it is fundamentally dishonest and creates a significant future risk. Ethically, it is deceptive and fails to uphold the commitment to quality. From a regulatory standpoint, it could be viewed as an attempt to circumvent reporting requirements and potentially lead to severe penalties if the underlying issue surfaces later. A third incorrect approach is to delay reporting the issue until a more convenient time or until it becomes undeniable. This is a failure of proactive ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. The longer an issue is known and unaddressed, the greater the potential harm to consumers and the more severe the repercussions for the company. It demonstrates a lack of accountability and a willingness to gamble with public safety and corporate reputation. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such dilemmas should first consult the company's code of conduct and relevant internal policies. They should then identify the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the situation. A structured decision-making process involves 1. Clearly defining the ethical and regulatory obligations. 2. Identifying all potential courses of action. 3. Evaluating the short-term and long-term consequences of each action, considering financial, ethical, legal, and reputational impacts. 4. Seeking guidance from supervisors or ethics/legal departments if uncertainty exists. 5. Choosing the action that best upholds ethical principles and regulatory compliance, even if it incurs immediate costs.